Let's set it off. All right. Hey, everybody. This is Victor Lucia, the founder and president of Brooklyn Fishing Club. I'm here tonight with Kenneth Westerfeld. Westerfield? Feld. All right, I'm going to try that again. Hey, everybody. This is Victor Lucia from the Brooklyn Fishing Club, founder and president. Tonight, I'm here with Kenneth Westerfeld, the... This always takes me a second. Give me 1 second.
Just waiting for you to do.
Hey everybody, this is Victor Lucia, founder and president of Brooklyn Fishing Club. Tonight I'm here with Harold Dieterle and Kenneth Westerfeld, and we're going to be talking a bit about blackfishing, the art of it, what attracts people to it, and different places you can go in New York City to do so. So I have Harold to my left. Harold, how you doing tonight, man?
Feeling great, man. Thanks for having me.
No problem, man. Anytime. Kenneth, how you doing?
Awesome. Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me. It's a real honor.
I appreciate you guys coming through. Let's dive right into it. So I know both of you are definitely obsessed with blackfishing, right?
For sure.
Could we say obsessed?
100%.
I mean, are there any other fish that you like to target more?
Definitely say tuna because I just love to eat tuna and I love to fight tuna. But I'm not the young, strong fella that I used to be. I've got foreign parts in my body these days and stuff. So all things considered, the inshore waters are where I call home most of the time. Blackfish would probably be my number one, although I love to bend a rod on whatever is in season. I absolutely adore fluke fishing. I love chasing trophy-size fluke. I love weak fish. I love to eat sea bass. Stripers are always fun. Just if I'm out there fishing, I'm a happy guy.
Same.
Yeah, sea bass is where it's at when it comes to in my opinion, the most delicious inshore fish. Shortly followed behind blackfish. But yeah, I'm right there with you.
I would have to agree. I would say sea bass is probably my favorite to consume. So how long have you guys fished? What got you into this sport?
I mean, I literally grew up with a rod in my hand. So when I was 3 or 4 years old, I was out summer flounder fishing. And it was definitely a family affair. I started off, fishing from docks in Long Island and doing the surf casting thing in the summertime, and then started cooking. And probably in my late teenage years, I took a break from it and started cooking much more seriously. And then when I had a couple of restaurants and got a little more established and was able to get a little time to get out on a boat. And now I'm living the semi-retired consulting life, so I spend a lot more time fishing than I do cooking. It's pretty awesome.
How about you, Ken?
Pretty much the same, actually. My dad was not, the organized sports guy, Little League coach. He was like an Eagle Scout, and he was a hunter, gun collector, fisherman. So that's how I was raised, with rod and reel in hand, as well as firearms. I don't know too many people that had firearm safety imposed upon them as young as I did, but
How young was that?
well, I was literally like the kid in the Christmas Story, the Daisy Red Ryder BB gun. I think I was like 5 years old when my dad actually let me have one. So yeah.
What draws you guys to blackfishing out of every other species? Why is this such a coveted species of fish to target?
You can go first.
I mean, for me, it's there's a couple not so different than like if you want a fluke fish, you can bucktail for fluke. There's a bunch of different ways to do it. The same thing goes for blackfish, and I think growing up as a child, I was never really a huge blackfish fisherman. Not until jigging became quite popular, which is, as you guys know, and I'm sure Ken will talk about the finer points on it later on. But jigging for blackfish is not the same as jigging for fluke fish. It's just a different terminal tackle setup, but feeling that bite on light spinning tackle and then fighting the fish and the adrenaline rush to get it out of the rocks or get it out of the reef before it pulls you in. And it probably hasn't happened to Ken because he's got the world record, but there's been several fish that I've hooked up with that I was unable to stop and fishing light tackle, and it is incredibly exciting.
Well, I mean, I would have to say that the first element for me is the fight alone. Pound for pound, I just love the bulldog effect. They pull harder than any other fish. Maybe sans a porgy. If porgies grew to like 20 to 30 pounds, we might not even fish for striped bass anymore. But I digress. Blackfish is, known as one of the most challenging inshore species to figure out the bite, and there's so many different ways to present your bait. And jigging is one, and I have different jigging styles, and certainly even terminal tackle presentations with conventional gear. I tie any one of like a dozen different rigs for different situations. When we're out commercial fishing, we're out there to make money and put fish in the boat, and it's not a hit or miss situation. It's serious business. So we come up with lots of different gimmicks to get the fish to bite, and every day can be different. You mentioned something about conditions before, tidal conditions, current conditions, wind conditions. There's so many different factors, including match the hatch. Going back to that, you always want to present the correct bait in the correct place at the correct time. You want to give them what they're looking for. Hopefully that'll get them turned on the most. And, it wasn't always such a big trophy hunt. It was really a numbers game in the beginning because they were so abundant. And, as we all know through media, social media, and regulations and so on, the numbers are decreasing. It's a serious issue because they're so commercially sought after. When I really first began blackfishing, they weren't a big marketable item. Lobstermen threw them away. And then once the lobster market collapsed in Long Island Sound and the Asian live market was born, then they became valuable, and their value climbed over the years, as the fish became tougher and tougher to fill the live wells, So that's the point where we're at right now.
So would you say that blackfish are in a similar situation as some would say to striped bass, where there's a deep concern about their future as a species, or do you think the population is healthy?
Well, in comparison, if you look at their market values, striped bass are an extremely popular fish and sought after. They're farm raised, and their quality is not known to be the same as wild caught. So the wild caught striped bass commands very high price, as does a live blackfish. It is supply and demand out there, and as our population grows, and not only nationally but internationally, because a lot of our fish get sold overseas. They are exported to places like Osaka and Tokyo and things like this. So,
interesting.
Yeah.
Would you, if you were to give a percentage of the amount of commercial blackfish that are shipped overseas, what would you say that would be?
I can't honestly comment on that number. I have really no clue,
It's a lot, though.
I can't even say that it is. I couldn't even really imagine an accurate number.
Gotcha.
I have no privy to that information, but I can tell you that, commercial blackfish fishing for the Asian live market has existed for better than 30 years, probably closer to 35, maybe even going on 40 years now. So, yeah, this is not something new. It's been going on for a long time, and over time, it's shown its decline.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I look at the blackfish market is a little more niche than wild striped bass. I mean, if just talking about here in the tri-state area, if you look at restaurant menus, uh, most restaurants have wild striped bass on the menu at some point. Where when I was cooking in my 3 restaurants and I would go fishing, and bring back some blackfish, most of the kids in the kitchen, the cooks, had no idea what blackfish was because it is a very, very popular live fish in the Asian markets. But if you're if you went to culinary school and weren't exposed to that, a lot of kids in the tri-state area don't know what blackfish are.
Yeah, it's not something that you would normally see in the everyday fish market or supermarket, fish counter. It's not. It's a rarity if it ever shows up there at all.
Yeah. What would you say the toughest part? Like, if you could single out the toughest aspect of blackfishing, what would you say it is?
I mean, for me, it's that fish that can get in your head if you're not having a good day. And I've had days where I'm just struggling to get my timing down and hook them. Like the bite can be right, especially jigging. If you're not patient and wait till they grab the jig and start taking off with it, trying to what I call a short hook set. When they're not committing to the bite, it can be very frustrating and get in your head, and it's game over.
So, Harold, you would say timing the hook set?
Yeah, I would say timing. I would say just the timing and getting it down. I've had days where I've certainly struggled.
What do you think, Ken?
Well, like I said, it changes day to day, and definitely figuring out the bite is a big part of the battle for most people. I think, like anything, repetition, the more you do it, the more of a touch you get for it. But, when I mentioned that every day is different, you really have to figure them out. I mean, people get a mindset that they want to catch their blackfish a certain way, like Harold, prefers jigging, and I totally understand that. I love jigging myself.
Yeah, sometimes it's the conditions aren't right. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, you need the right conditions, and I always say that if you really need to go much above 2.5 ounces, that really the novelty of jigging is lost. You might as well go to a rig at that point, because they feel the weight. The fish feel tension, fish feel weight. And if they feel that weight, they tend to spit it out and swim away from it, basically. So I always find that, the lighter your presentation, the more bites you get.
Yep.
And it holds the same true with a conventional presentation, too, I think. I always like to use weight that is basically in contact with the bottom, but not crashing the bottom like a downrigger or something like that,
So just like if you're fluke fishing, same concept with the weight.
Yeah, every day is different. You have to figure them out, and people get the idea in their head that they want to catch their fish their way. Somebody's in love with jigging. I totally get it, but I always say there's a time and place for everything, and you have to know when that is. You can approach a fishing trip with just one presentation in mind and expect to catch fish through the entire time. Why? Because the conditions are guaranteed to change throughout the course of that trip. You will not have the same speed of tide from one end of a 7-hour trip to another, or 6 hours of fishing, or whatever it is. A tide starts and finishes within the course of 5-6 hours, right? So
and then you have slack tide.
Right. So fish are sometimes stimulated by slack to feed. Sometimes they're stimulated by moving water. And the presentation needs to change throughout. If you want to continuously connect with those fish, you have to figure out how they want to eat at each different stage of the tide. If you have the mindset to do one particular thing, then you're going to miss out on bites through certain periods of that tidal phase. And sometimes fish will only bite on one tide. A tide may be cooler, which prompts them to bite. A tide may be warmer, which prompts them to bite. Or the opposite, the warmer tide might shut them off. The colder tide might shut them off. So it's seasonal. You have to figure it out, trip by trip, day by day, what those periods are. And when you have a rhythm of it, when you're going out consistently and, it's a day after day thing, then your finger is really on the pulse. You can predict a lot better. But if it's like a once a month thing for you or even weekly, a lot can change in the course of a week. And certainly weather conditions are always a factor that affects things too.
When would you say the best time of year to go is? I mean, obviously during the season in the fall, but even into the winter, right?
Yeah, that's a fair question. As you know, in New York, we were given a spring season, which in my mind is pretty much a joke.
It's a joke. Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost pointless to have the month of April because they really don't start to bite until maybe, if you're lucky and weather patterns are favorable, they might bite in the last 10 days of April if you're lucky, or any time within that period, they may begin to bite, but it'll be, in our neighborhood, it'll be cold and sluggish, most likely. It'll be like a cold water bite getting started. Definitely the fall, is the best time for recreational anglers. Sometimes even in early October, it's not optimum. The conditions are not optimum. This year we had actually good early season conditions. The summer seemed to stay warm long, but when it went, it really went in a hurry. And we've had all this wind, and we've had, a lot of tough time finding weather to even get out and fish. So it's been challenging. But I like, the period that we're in right now. So we're getting into November. This is the beginning of November, right? And we just had Election Day yesterday, and this is traditionally and classically a very active period for these fish to bite. Temperatures are definitely getting right. The availability of good bait is starting to materialize. Everything is falling into place for things to get into high gear. But so far this year, it's been consistently good. It's been good.
What would you say the ideal water temp is for big blackfish?
Well, you can catch a big blackfish any old time, any old place. There's really no strictly proven formula. Big fish bite in the shallows early on. I've had some 10, 11 pound fish in like 5 feet of water. And, that would be early October in the beginning of the season. The season used to start a little earlier for us too. Yeah. But, I cut my teeth in the Western Long Island Sound running my own boats. And, right about the time that jigging was just really starting to get to be known and become popular, John Knight with Tidal Tails jigs out of Hudson Bait and Tackle and, all the charters in the Sound were starting to jig and catch big fish consistently doing it. I was running my own boats already for a couple of years, and, I came across the jigging presentation thanks to a couple of different people and, of course, reading publications. I started doing it on my own boats in the Sound in very shallow water. And early season, I had landed 10.5, 11-pound fish, 10-pound fish, 9, 8s, 9s. A lot of nice big fish in very skinny water. It's a lot of fun. It's a great challenge.
Yeah, Harold, didn't you just get a couple in about 5 feet of water?
Yeah, I was in 8 feet of water in the Western Long Island Sound. I had a a 7-pounder in 8 feet of water. It was fantastic, and I struggled to stop it and felt the line vibrating against the rocks. I thought it was going to break off. I was freaking out, but that's the love of it, right? It's
Oh, yeah,
that
absolutely.
adrenaline rush.
I mean, that's the whole point of like we light tackle blackfish. Let's face it, the average blackfish you catch, I mean, you're going to go through a whole lot more throwbacks before you actually get the keeper size fish in the boat at 16 inches now, and especially in the Western Sound.
Yep.
The keepers are fewer and further between. That's the reason for them cutting the limit down to 3 fish like they did. But you catch a lot of throwback fish, and to make it sportier, it's a whole lot more fun on light spinning gear. And then when you hook something with a little bit of bulk to it, it's sporty. And why would you want to fish, with heavy gear for fish that average probably under 5 pounds?
Oh, yeah.
So just considering the quantity of that type of fishing that you usually encounter, light tackle is kind of the answer. It's fun, and it revitalized the game in so many ways. We traditionally fished with very heavy gear in the ocean, and we needed heavy gear for heavy lead. It wasn't that the fish were all big exactly. It was to match the conditions. And wreck fishing, that was a point of reasoning for using heavy gear. We're fishing on wrecks. We got to pull big fish out of heavy structure, So, the jigging was a game changer. And Harold, you also mentioned before, hooking into one, not being able to stop it. That is a huge part of the game.
Yeah.
And if that's never happened to you, then you haven't been doing it long enough. Nobody has a 100% success record when it comes to these fish.
Yeah.
Experience and putting in your time and season after season after season. If you haven't gotten smoked by a few, then you're telling stories. I don't believe that. Nobody is 100% on point, with their catch ratio. I don't care how much time you put in, how experienced you are. These fish use their home against you, and their home is sticky and snaggy and treacherous. And, some days a guy can break off and break off and break off and retie and retie and retie and retie, to the point where it becomes really frustrating. And I've definitely had those days.
I think we know someone that's happened to.
Yeah.
I was just about to ask you. The next question would be, because you guys are really hardcore into this, and I've given it attempts, but it is frustrating, man. I mean, I'm just really good at catching rocks, and when I don't catch a rock, it's usually a small blackfish, which makes it even more frustrating. So what type of advice would you give somebody like me who loves to fish, but is kind of getting discouraged by this angle of the sport?
The best advice that I could give you is take one of my personal tutorials, show you everything you need to know. Aside from that...
Wait, are you inviting us out on your boat?
If I had a boat right now, I'd certainly invite you. I'm actually shopping, believe it or not. Yeah. But we can make that happen eventually. Sure, why not? Today I run a big page on Facebook myself with like 6,500 plus members, and
cool.
It was put to me about 2 years ago to organize some trips for the members of the group. So I did that. I've been putting some great trips together with the Hampton Lady each year, and we've done some awesome fluke trips. As well as blackfish and wreck fishing with them out there, and they have a pretty cool fishery. They have good trophy specimens in almost every class at the right time of the year, in season. So that's gone really well, and we'll be doing more of that, as well as probably setting up some trips in other places. Maybe some more exotic destinations.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I know a lot of guys fish for them off boats. In the New York City area, are there any general locations that you would recommend that you could target them from
Well, look,
shore?
man, you know the deal with spot burning.
I know
right?
general locations, burrows.
Yeah,
even.
general locations for tog. I mean, it's pretty kind of obvious. They love hard structure.
Yeah.
And you need a little bit of depth, maybe some current that doesn't hurt. But you can find blackfish holding to structure, any kind of structure, just about anywhere. They catch them on the jetties, they catch them at the inlets, they catch them off of piers, bulkheads, you name it. There's a lot of different hard structure spots that are connected to shore points where they do regularly catch them. But people are very protective over them, and they don't encourage a lot of invitations of
Definitely.
of new folks. So I don't want to make anybody mad.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
What would you say for both of you, like some of your fondest memories of fishing for blackfish around NYC would be?
I
Or
would
some of your
s-
best trips?
Yeah, I would say I had a couple really amazing trips with rockfish charters, fishing the Rockaway Reef, hooked in some really quality fish. Definitely broke off some 10-pound plus fish, and it was frustrating, but also got in a couple fish in the 7-8 pound range last year. And it was a solid bite all year. And it's interesting what Kenneth says is because I'd gone out the week before and used green crabs and didn't have a great day, and Richie had white legs on there, and we were destroying them. So it's just like it's really crazy how that bait change really makes such a difference to the bite.
Yeah, my all-time favorite bait happens to be a whole white crab.
Yeah.
I always take the claws off.
Yep.
And I like to fish 2 hooks in the crab,
The snafu rig.
usually.
Yep.
Although that does change from time to time.
Of course.
And I just like to crack that top shell, and that's how I like to do it. And when they're biting the right way, when you don't need a gimmick like a jig or
Yeah.
whatever else, that's my favorite. That's, to me, the ultimate. I think I've caught more big tog on a whole white crab probably as opposed to anything else. And definitely my all-time favorite. I don't think that'll ever change.
Would you agree with that too, Harold?
I mean, I like to jigging for me is really the real excitement. I really act like a child when I have to switch to a conventional setup. I stomp my feet a little bit, but everyone is just the captain is basically looking at me, just telling me. I've been fishing quite a bit with Nick Marchetti on Never Enough. Yeah. And he's a very, very sharp black fisherman, and he knows when the current is doing its thing, and he'll just let me know. He's like, you're probably not going to do very well with the jig right now. And he's 100% right. So I want to jig 100% of the time, but you just can't do that if there's too much current, or it's just not worth it if you got to bump up on the weight. They'll just feel it. But I've caught my biggest blackfish on unconventional tackle.
Me too.
Yeah.
A lot of them.
What was
A lot of
what
them.
was your biggest blackfish, Ken?
Well, when I honestly, I have to say this because this is fishing. And when it comes to fishing, size matters. All right. So when I hung the fish on the IGFA certified scale at the Sunset Marina in Ocean City, Maryland, the scale read 29 pounds flat. And it stayed there for a little while. And then, of course, what happens is, the fish drains.
Yeah.
We kept it wet. We kept it in a saltwater ice slurry the entire time. And then when we got there, of course, the fish came out to go on the scale. And everybody came out of the woodwork to see it, of course. It was huge news. And everybody was posing with my fish hanging there.
Yeah, I originally didn't know who caught it when all the pictures flooded the internet. I was like, is it that
I
guy?
can
Is it that
imagine.
guy? Who is this guy?
Yeah. It was the fat guy. So anyway, yeah, the fish hung there for a while and it drained, and I got gypped out of 3 ounces as far as I'm concerned. But, you know, you live and you learn. So the next time I catch an all tackle world record, I will know better. You know, I'll just take it out of the box, hang it up, and say, okay, guys, this is the fish. Here's your opportunity. Take your picture. Thanks very much. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, so the fish hung there a while, lost a little bit of weight, and, you know, it was a huge fish, no question. I mean, it did beat the standing world record at the time almost by 4 pounds, which is quite a bit.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, crazier things could potentially happen in the future. We've seen a lot of big ones in recent years, and a lot of people really, you know, believe in their heart there are bigger out there. Some people say that a larger one will never be caught, but, you know, I think that most of us tog guys are dreamers, and we want to continue to dream that dream, you know.
Tell me a little bit about that fight with that fish.
Well, I always like to say that it was definitely worthy of a world record fish, you know. I mean, it wasn't a 600-pound bluefin tuna. I didn't fight it for 4 hours or anything, you know. It was mono e fisho, you know, standing on the deck of a down east boat on anchor. And that fish definitely gave it its all. There were points in the fight where he ran out of gas and came back to life again. It was interesting, and definitely, you know, I can recant every phase of that. I'm guessing it was something like 7 minutes, you know.
Wow.
Well, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
What was your reaction when you finally laid eyes on it?
You know, first of all, when I saw color on the fish, I was questioning what it could have potentially been at that point. I mean, I saw a lot of characteristic blackfish color about 30 to 40 feet down, but, you know, it could have also been a black drum. It could have been some kind of grouper, a wreck fish that got lost or something. I don't, you know. Yeah, it was a big blackfish, unusually large, and it definitely gave me the blackfish bite and the blackfish fight. But at one period when it was kind of like in a comatose stage, you know, the rod remained bent with the weight of the fish, but he was out of gas for a few moments until he revived. And I was even questioning if I had the world record dogfish on for a couple of moments, you know. But yeah, then he came back to life. And at that point, I think I had him about 3/4 of the way up off the bottom. And my Thorium 14 reel star drag was locked down within 1 click of full drag. And when he woke up, that drag just poured effortlessly and smoothly off the spool. And I thought the fish was going to get back in the wreck, so I double thumbed the spool to stop him and turn his head again. And, you know, not to toot my own horn or anything, but I've gotten a lot of crap from people on the internet, you know, saying, you know, it doesn't really count because it was caught on a charter.
What?
And, you know, the captain deserves the recognition for that fish. Look, the captain, without him, I never would have caught that fish. That's 100% crystal clear. You know, I give him all the credit in the world for being one of the most fantastic blackfish captains on the East Coast as far as I'm concerned. Captain Kane Bounds anchors a boat on a piece of bottom so textbook, like few people do. He puts out so much line, and his anchoring skills I have always found to be 100% precision. No matter what the conditions he's been given, he puts that boat on the piece and you are fishing. You know, you're not 10 feet to the left or to the right, you're on it. you know. So Kane, you know, I had a mold of the mount made just for him, you know, because he shares in that victory 50%, maybe 51, you know, maybe 49% goes to me. But I think that there's a whole lot of tog anglers out there that don't have the experience, that might not have handled that fight the same way. I mean, let's face it, I knew when to book the trip. I knew where to book the trip. You know, I can't ever say you can plan catching a world record, because that would be total BS. You know, nobody can plan catching a world record of any kind. I don't care. You know, there's a whole huge element of luck in that. There's no question about it. But the feat that I accomplished, there's so many things that can go wrong. Your knots need to be tied correctly, and they need to hold together. You can't have one fray in your whole setup. You know, you had to choose the right bait. You have to have the right bait presentation. You have to know what to do with the bite once you get it. And once you hook the fish, you have to know how to successfully fight that fish and get it to the surface. And all of those things went right for me, you know. So regardless of who wants to give me credit or wants to, you know, whatever, Captain Kane is so instrumental in that capture. I couldn't have done it without him. That's, you know, clear and for the record. And I'm in awe of the guy. I'm, you know, honored to be a continuing customer of his with an annual spot in his trip rotation. And I had already, you know, asked him before that trip, probably 2 years before that trip, if he could please give me one particular, you know, the first weekend of the year in January, sans New Year's, is my trip for life. That's what we agreed on. Until I'm dead or until he hears from me differently, that is my time. And he agreed to it, and we have stuck to that agreement. And sadly, I'd fish with him more, but he's so booked. He's booked 2 years in advance. I can't even get another day on his boat if I wanted most of the time, as crazy as that sounds, you know. But I'm glad for him, you know. He's got a fantastic business. He ran a fantastic business before I came along. And I think after the fact, it's been tough for him too, because, you know, probably 87% of his customers tell him, well, I only want big fish. You know, he caught the world record on his boat, you know, so everybody specifies they only want big fish. And I know that drives him crazy.
It's like a gift and a curse almost.
Yeah.
You brought up an interesting point, which I've just started doing this year, is manually locking your drag down with your hand. You know, I find a lot of fishermen don't really think about doing it or don't have the confidence to do it because they're afraid they're going to break the fish off or know the right time to do it. How do you make your decision when you're going to do it? Do you base it on how deep the water is, and if you think, you know, you've gotten a couple initial cranks in, you get the fish out, and then he makes a run on it, and you're worried he's going to get locked in, or what's your thought process? You
know, there's a certain degree of instinct involved in that, and you know, a good guess at spatial orientation, basically. You know, the fish you're fighting, you have to kind of envision at what point in the fight you're at. You know, when you set that hook, he's near the structure. There's definitely a danger of that fish getting back in. When you feel that you've gotten enough cranks on him that, you know, you're in a safe zone and that fish takes a run, well, you might want to try to put the brakes on him a little at that point, but not too early in the fight. You know, I mean, a big, strong fish definitely has to expend himself and get tired out. And I have been smoked by fish that I couldn't stop,
you know,
that... Yeah, I mean, that I never got to see, and, you know, in different locations at different times, and actually many times through my, like, 25 years of blackfish fishing. Most of that happened to be pretty serious blackfish fishing. But it's funny. A good friend of mine that I've been fishing with the last year, Mike Sadowski, who's also a pretty well-known angler, and he's been successful in the last 7 years of his own personal recreational fishing. He's landed a lot of nice fish, and he's well-known on Facebook and the internet. We've been sharing some great trips together in the last year. And he attended a trip. Vincent actually said that we would touch on this earlier. We went down on the Fish Whisperer in Wachapreague, Virginia, last February. And it was one of those days in winter where all of the elements came together. And winter fishing is really tough fishing, I mean, there's so many things that have to align for a good day to happen in the cold parts of the winter. And we had a day like that. We got one good day out of 3 days that we got booked. And we were down there. We fished a drop that was like 100 feet. We had the right set of conditions, and the fish bit for us that day. And it wasn't like a hellish, crazy bite where, it was just lock and load out of control.
Yeah.
You had to work for the bites. It was cold water conditions. It was deep water. Luckily, we had some really good bait, which is almost unfound that time of year. Yeah, you have to have your sources, you have to have the right connections. And we brought our bait down, and it happened to be exceptional, and that was a big difference maker in our trip. So anyway, on this particular trip, I think we had 7 fish that we landed in double digits.
My goodness.
Mike had a 20-pounder, which was the big fish of the trip.
I'm going to be stalking you. You're never going to be able to get rid of me now talking about this.
My dear friend Pete Sedaris, one of my number one fishing buddies, my number one partner, the last several years since 2008, Pete had one 16.9, and I landed one in 100 feet of water on 15-pound test braid, 16 pounds, 4.8 ounces.
What's the business fishing that light braid? You're just messing around and having fun at that point, or like, what's your thought process?
Well, number one, the fish weren't biting their heads, or they weren't committing suicide. So I sometimes go to a jig just to get a bite.
Yeah, sure.
Which is kind of what happened that day. But I also had it in mind to try for a line class record.
Okay.
And stupid me, I left the house before consulting the record book, and I didn't know what the target weight was. But I actually beat the existing IGFA 16-pound test record by 1.5 ounces.
Wow.
Which might have qualified for a win. But also my 15-pound test braid would have had to test out at that line strength, because the problem with a lot of braided lines is that braided lines are underrated, right?
Yeah.
So they'll actually break at a higher pound test strength. And therefore, a lot of potential records while using braid do get disqualified.
Sure.
So I was hoping for a record, and I might have had it, but I didn't know what the target weight was, and I released the fish.
Speaking of releasing fish, how many double-digit blackfish would you say you've released?
Okay, well,
rough estimate.
Here's the thing, commercial fishing, right? My commercial captain cares about his catch because he's trying to make money, and that catch has to get sold. Mm-hmm. Okay. So a lot of times I don't even get to handle fish again after I put that fish in the boat and it goes in the live well. I might not even get a picture
Yeah.
Not might. I mean, I can tell you it's happened dozens of times that I've had double-digit fish and they went in the live well and I never saw them again.
Yeah.
You know.
How about when you weren't commercial fishing?
Okay, so there have been a few, including that big one.
Yeah. Oh, that big 16-pounder went back.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
The reason I ask is because when I posted that photo on Instagram announcing that you would be on the podcast of you holding the world record, there were quite a few people who left comments saying things like, "Oh, that's the type you let go. Why would you kill a fish that big? This and that."
I hear a
And,
lot of that.
They don't realize, I don't think, how many of these fish you've released.
Well, I mean, certainly I've released a lot more short and smaller size keepers than any of the average fisherman might imagine. I mean, I've had plenty of trips down south in Maryland and even more so on eastern Long Island where we would release every female, I mean, we were catching enough fish to keep limits of males only.
Yeah.
Where we thought we were doing the environment a favor at that point. So that was recreational fishing, and I'd done that many times,
How can you tell the difference between the male and the female?
Well, yeah, once you know, but the male is usually more blunt in the head and the chin, has a big white chin and a white underbelly, and their flanks will be a solid color, either the darker toward the black or gray. And they almost always have at least one white spot on their flank somewhere. Generally like a bullseye right in the middle of the fish. The females, their head is a bit more pointed, comes to a point, and they have bars on their side. And they have a mottled coloration or sort of like a calico kind of coloration.
Gotcha.
It can be rusty or gold. And
you'll see rusty males too.
Yeah.
On the shoulders. A
Yeah.
lot of times you'll see rusty on the head and the shoulders.
Okay.
It depends on their environment because the color of the fish often has to do with what they're feeding on.
Yep.
I think the rusty fish they're feeding on. I think it's a soft type of barnacle, like a gelatinous barnacle that they often feed on. You'll see them if you check their stomach contents. We call them horses' buttholes, but we don't. Honestly, I couldn't tell you what the biological scientific name is. But yeah, so they're sort of orangey like that. They have that copper color, and you'll see that it'll be copper bronze, orangey. We used to call them pumpkins in this one particular place because they all had that coloration on them. Sometimes fish feed on mussels, and you'll see like more bluishness in them, and you'll even see the meat, bluishness in the meat. Definite blue hue or distinct coloration to it.
Interesting. How long do these fish take to grow, to mature? How old is like a 20-pound?
That's a very
blackfish?
popular question. It's a good question. Well, what we're finding out is, and I have worked with marine biologists in several different states on the subject of blackfish at this point. First of all, let me tell you that my world record fish, after getting a fiberglass mount made, and there was no other fish of that size, so they had to cast a mold of that fish, right? So they had to use the fish. Well, after you make a mold with the fish, there's no way on earth you would want to eat it because it's full of epoxy and all this, and it's frozen, and then it thaws out, and then it refreezes, and then it thaws out, and you would not want to eat that, okay? So, I had the mounts made, and then I got the remains of the fish. I took the carcass, and the cool thing about my personal mount is they cut the jaws of the fish out and they included it in my personal fiberglass mount at home. So his actual teeth are in there, and it's super cool. But I took the rest of the remains of the fish and I brought it to the New York State tautog biologist in Setauket, Long Island, Sandra Dumas. And she did 2 conclusive aging studies on the fish, one using the opercular bone in the cheek, which grows rings like a tree would. And then they have the otolith bone in the inner ear, which is actually they consider to be slightly more accurate in some way. So she did the aging studies on both of those. And then she sent the samples to other marine biologists down south that wanted to study them. And they were conclusive of her findings as well. And then they took organ tissue samples to test DNA, because the interesting part of all of this is they wanted to see if our northern tog are the same strain and species as the more southern tog. What I think we've learned for sure is that the water down south is warmer. So the fish have a longer feeding season, which translates into more growth, right? Up here, the water's colder. They feed for a shorter period, and it takes them a longer time to grow, as opposed to how quickly their southern relatives can grow because they're eating more and growing faster. So in the state of Virginia, I believe his name is Hamish Smalls, if I'm not mistaken. My friend Wes Blow was doing some work with Hamish. He's a Virginia State tog biologist, and he was collecting a lot of samples of bigger specimens to study. And Wes was on a tear in winter of 2015, catching a lot of big blackfish on ocean wrecks. And they did take a lot of samples of those fish. Well, April of 2015, I fished down there with Wes on his boat, and I landed my second largest, which was, it weighed in at 17 pounds, 13 ounces, just shy of 18. It was a beautiful fish. It survived a spear hit. You can see the huge scar on the back of its head. And those bone samples also went to study. But I filleted that fish and I ate it. I actually sashimi'd an almost 18-pound blackfish, and it was good.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
What were the findings of the study of that world record? How old was that one?
22 years old.
Wow.
Yep.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so people were betting that it was 50 or above. People were saying, oh, that's got to be 75 years old, maybe more. Well, if that fish was caught up here, I guess there's a chance it might have been. But, yeah, it was only 22 years old because it's a southern fish.
Gotcha. So the last thing I want to talk to you guys about would be how you like to prepare blackfish. I know both of you guys love to cook. Harold is actually the first ever winner of Top Chef. He's the original Top Chef.
That's awesome. Thanks, I am in awe of that because I'm such a foodie.
Thanks, man.
So let's talk about that. How do you guys like to prepare these fish when you catch them?
I mean, it's just like Kenneth was saying, sashimi is certainly a fantastic option right out of the boat. I actually do prefer fish eaten raw the second day because fish go through a process of rigor mortis, and the fish is still a little tight. It's a little tough, and the flavor actually really develops much better the second day. So I know it's really sexy to catch your fish and slice it up on the boat with some sauce, and you can certainly do that, but it is a better raw eating experience the second day. Blackfish is super versatile, right? Because it's eating crabs, it's eating shellfish, it's got a lot of sweet meat, it's got a nice flake to it. You can really do anything. You can pan roast it, fry it. I love it with fish tacos. I love steaming it in an Asian preparation with some black bean sauce. It grills really nice. I actually do this thing where I grill it indirectly because I find a lot of folks' grills don't get hot enough. and you're constantly trying to grill fish, but the fish is getting stuck on the grill. So what I like to do is take some vegetables and grill the vegetables first. Put the fish in a little bit of a rub or marinade, and sit the fish on top of the grilled vegetables and close the lid to the grill. So I call it indirect grilling. And just until the top of the fish is cooked through, because the bottom is going to cook much quicker. Yeah, that's the way I've been cooking it lately.
What goes into that marinade?
Lately I've been using like Meyer lemon zest, fresh thyme, some garlic, and just mince all that up and just toss it with a little nice extra virgin olive oil and just brush it on top of the fish. Blackfish is so beautiful and so delicious. Like when people say they do this crazy stuff with it, like blacken it or make like General Tso's fish, it's just like, why would you mask such a delicious fish?
It's almost like putting ketchup on a fish.
It's almost like putting I mean, it's just as bad. I mean, I hear some guys that I'm like watching them like do demos on Facebook where they're taking blackfish and like wrapping it in aluminum foil and then dumping like mango salsa on top of it. And I'm just like, I mean, you might as well just use tilapia because you're not going to taste it. But that's just me.
I mean, that's awesome. That's next level stuff right there with the scientific approach, you know, and I'm in awe of that. I just love hearing that kind of stuff, and I could talk about it all day. You know, I grew up around a fine dining environment myself. My parents owned a pretty big restaurant for a dozen years when I was a kid, and I grew up bussing tables and waiting on tables and talking to very experienced, highly trained chefs. And, you know, I probably should have had a culinary school education myself. I wish I did. It's, you know, if I had it all to do over again, I probably would one day, but I don't know. Anyway, I prepare fish many, many, many different ways, and I love the raw texture and flavor and the whole experience. And I do, you know, ceviches, and I do definitely sashimi and nigiri sushi, right? That's pieces with the rice,
Correct.
right?
Yep.
I'm a huge sushi guy. I just adore sushi.
Me too.
It's probably like one of my favorite all-time foods on earth, you know, and that's a huge motivation for my fishing experience. But yeah, aside from slicing fish and putting it on rice and things like that, you know, when it comes to cooking it, it's terrible to fry stuff. I get it, you know, and
that fish fries really well.
There's just so many ways to fry it too. You know, there's not just one way to do it.
Nope.
And you know, each presentation gives you a different texture and a slightly different flavor, and you know, the whole ball of wax, it changes. And lately what I've discovered is restaurant quality Mexican nacho chips, right?
Yep.
They're ultra thin.
Yep.
So you get a lot of breakage in the bottom of the bag, right? So I saw that and I'm like, these chips are so good, you know, because I'm a big salsa nut too, right?
Got it.
So I pulverized the remainder of the chips in the bag, and I egged the tog nuggets. I like cutting them small.
Okay.
You know, not too small, but definitely not big. And I egged them, and I rolled them in the nacho breading. I added some flour to that and maybe a little bit of Chef Paul Prudhomme's black and red fish seasoning. I just love that stuff. I use it for, I know you make your own seasoning mixes. Obviously, you wouldn't be a world-class chef if you know, went and bought the store-bought version.
Yeah, I mean, some like Old Bay's, there's nothing wrong with some Old Bay, but that one's totally cool too.
Yeah. I love a Cajun flavor, but so anyway, I fry it in peanut oil because peanut oil kind of like burns the hottest, right?
Yeah,
and definitely don't serve it to anybody with a nut allergy.
High smoking point for sure.
Yeah. So that's how I do it, and I make It's kind of like the Outback bloomin' onion sauce. You know, I make like a sriracha horseradish tartar sauce, basically.
Yep.
I throw the mayo with some horseradish, maybe some relish, depending on how I'm feeling, a good shot of sriracha. And lately it was suggested that I do a remoulade.
Yep.
So I've been doing that quite a bit lately,
Gotcha.
and I do like it.
Using cornichons and capers.
Ah, okay. Well,
Using relish.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm kind of like throwing in what I got.
So try and get
handy.
try and get some cornichons and like put them in the pulverize those instead of using sweet relish.
Okay.
It gives you a much better experience.
I'm definitely going to look for those.
When you do your raw fish, do you like to bleed your fish first? Usually.
Oh, that's a great point.
Yeah.
You know, if you're going to eat your fish raw, even if you're not going to eat your fish raw, bleed a fish, because anything killed by a butcher gets bled out, right? And there's a whole bunch of great reasons for that. Number one, it increases shelf life. You know, it's healthier, cleaner, less risk in eating it if the blood is out, because the first thing in any living thing to decompose is blood, right? So your shelf life automatically increases. It freezes better. If you freeze it, I do freeze a lot of fish. I eat it throughout the winter in case, you know, I don't get the opportunity to go out and fish for a few months.
Every species of fish, not just blackfish.
Definitely. Bleed them all. You know, they just eat better.
Yep.
You know, if you cook them, if you eat them raw, it doesn't matter.
The flesh looks a lot nicer too. It always comes out a lot
Amen.
cleaner and whiter.
Totally. Yep.
Good stuff. I wish I could catch more blackfish because I'm.
Listen, you just gotta.
You
You gotta do it. You're primed. You're primed for it.
Just
You're
gotta
ready.
Commit to it. Really put the
You're
work in.
You're about to
like
blossom
Ken's
into
saying.
a serious togger. I can tell.
I know you got me into the fluking.
I know.
and I've gotten okay at it.
Yep, you're really good.
But hey, I just want to say thank you to you guys for coming on the show. If there's any parting words you want to leave our fans with, now's the time.
No, I'm going to be all over Kenneth. I'm going to be all over hit Ken about going blackfishing with him though, because I'm just want to get better, and I have one double digit under my belt, but I just want to catch big ones now. I'm hooked.
Yeah, I think you each made a new friend tonight. for sure.
Definitely. Most definitely.
Between the food and the blackfish.
Oh, yeah.
It's over.
Oh, yeah. Harold's definitely got a lot I can learn.
Just
There's
forget
no
about
question
me.
that. And I'm interested, you know. I'm totally interested, yeah.
So, Ken, what's the name of your Facebook group that you promote?
Okay, yeah. Well, I'm running, I think, 6 groups at present, but
Oh, wow.
the main group that, you know, kind of everything else branches into is NYC/L.I. Fishing and Hunting Alliance on FB, Facebook.
Yep.
Yeah, so New York City / Long Island Fishing and Hunting Alliance.
Yeah.
And like I said, currently we're up to 6,500 and counting members. Yep.
Yeah, it's one of the few groups that I'm a member of on Facebook, because I don't even really use Facebook except for to run the Brooklyn Fishing Club. But yeah, thanks a lot, guys, for coming out tonight. Really appreciate it. You could check us out at Brooklyn Fishing Club on Instagram. Google us, brooklynfishingclub.com, if you're trying to go fishing in New York City. We even do trips outside the city. We fish all year round. Coming up, we have obviously black fishing, but after that, when it gets too cold, we go ice fishing. So if you're trying to fish, if you like the outdoors and you live in the New York metro area, you should definitely shoot us an email, brooklynfishingclub@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you, and we'd love to hear some suggestions that you have for the podcast. Who should we have on as guests next? What topics should we cover? What do you want to hear as our listener? So let us know.